Well, good morning, everyone. It's great to see you.
Yes, good to see you.
Thank you.
Today, we're going to talk about Know Thyself. And we have a thumbnail of the Temple of Apollo at Delphi, which is outside of Athens in Greece. And the ancient Greeks wrote three maxims on that temple, which we'll discuss today. But as you listen to our coaches and our conversation, and you've ever wondered, what does it mean to know thyself? Well, you'll know by the end of this coaching meeting. So welcome, everybody. Okay, I'm going to share my screen and we're going to spin through a couple of things here. Hang on. Guess I'll start here. And I'm going to go to this. There we go. See if I can go into present mode and see. Ta-da, we have it. Okay, so this is a picture of what's left of the oracle at Delphi and ancient Greece construction. And it had three maxims that were carved on the top of the arch. The first one was nothing to excess. So I guess moderation in everything is how we would say it today. The second one is certainty brings insanity. I never hear that one talked about. But I think if you think you already know everything, it's hard to make changes. So in knowing thyself, maybe we admit we don't know everything. And then the last one, of course, the most famous one, know thyself. Okay, so we have a meme. Here's Jesus or a saint or an angel or somebody saying, all right, that's enough. Give me the phone. If you want to start to examine how you're living, maybe make some changes, putting the phone down might be a good first step. So here's some things we can discuss as jumping off points, and then we'll go to some memes. Self-inquiry, know thyself, contemplation, meditation, journaling. We'll talk about journaling. What your self-talk is, because you may be telling yourself things that are not true, but you haven't examined it enough to know that's going on. People in therapy, people in coaching, people using hypnosis. Those are all ways to get to know yourself. Okay, now here we have some memes. And there's someone journaling out there in nature. So maybe the kitty cat can see the lion inside when they get to know themselves. This is funny. I just lost my mood ring. Not sure how I feel about that. And then the last one, maybe this is what the enlightened view is. What are my pronouns? I am. Those are my pronouns. So, okay, let's stop sharing. And we have a lot to talk about today. Brian, do you want to kick us off with some ideas about how to know thyself and maybe the value of doing so?
Yeah, I want to take it in some different directions here. Um, so one question is, can you know yourself? Is that possible? And I think, saying yes to that is a good answer, but it's also good to explore maybe you can't fully know yourself. I do think that there is a sense of infinity to life. And I actually think that has to exist in order for life to exist. If there was some like dead end you could hit, where you're like, well, I completely know myself now, that would kind of life wouldn't really work, right? It actually has to be an infinite thing that you can endlessly explore. That's literally an essential feature that makes it life. So I would say if there was some dead end you could hit where you're like, I know 100% of myself, that would mean it was more like a computer program. It's more like a simulation. You ran into the end of the code, right? That's all the character can do in the game. There's only so many moves, right? So I do think, and I think life comes from an infinite source. I think God is an infinite source, but for reasons like that. So, but I do think there's sort of a season for all things. So there are times when it's very good to like define your purpose, define your mission, have a strong sense of who you are, a strong sense of identity, and that helps you fulfill that mission and carry forward. There's also another season in your life where it may be good to let yourself be a mystery a little bit. Kind of say, I don't know, maybe I have some other qualities. Like let's explore, let's journey, let's see where this goes. That's a little bit more of a kind of an artsy way to be. You're kind of just letting yourself see what new emotions, feelings, thoughts, inspirations sort of bubble up in you over time. So you're kind of taking a position like, I don't fully know everything. I'm letting things come up to the surface. I'm going to see what's there and maybe turn it into art or something like that. So I do think there's a season for all things in that way. And a lot of people, when they talk about knowing themselves, they're going to go to like personality or identity. In a religious context, you could just say, well, I'm a child of God. That's what I am. Or in, some other spiritual context, you could have yourself defined or identified that way. And some people, I would say, have taken that pretty far to the point where they're like, no, that's what I am. I'm a child of God. And that matters more than my personality or my career or my identity. So this is another direction you can take that in. Um, and what I find interesting, getting really kind of further off the deep end here, not a normal way to interpret some biblical lines here, but I want to get into this because I think it's cool. It sort of touches on A Course in Miracles as well. So the line that we're made in the image of God, right? You could, I don't think this is like the most direct or necessarily logical interpretation, but it's cool to explore this. You could read that line a little bit differently than people normally read it. And you could say, like, in the image of God is like living in that, being in communion with that. That's how we're really made. That's how we're really fulfilled through God. So you could see it as like a stained glass window in a church. Imagine you're just the window and you're just letting the light of God just shine through. Now, maybe if you pray prayers to try to have God come through you and work through you and move through you, maybe that ends up being a more real version of yourself than you were being when you were being what you thought of as your personality or your identity. So when you get into like A Course in Miracles, it talks about doing exercises or sort of praying prayers to make God's will and your will like the same. So you're no longer in conflict with God. It's like you're yoking the wills. Maybe that's where you find your true or your deeper nature of knowing yourself. And I'm just throwing these things out there so people can explore. Another thing that I think is really cool about Course in Miracles, and I really like Course in Miracles. This is the only place I've ever seen this idea. I've never seen this concept anywhere else. Is it talks about how actually ego, which is a way that people can think of themselves, they can think of it as their ego. There's one lesson where it talks about ego is an attack on everyone else, and to some extent maybe it's an attack on God. And I find that really interesting. So I think people should consider this. Maybe when we sort of want to take our abilities or our identity or our achievements or our status and kind of carry that aura where we're like trying to stand out in front of everyone, actually it can make a lot of other people in the group perceive it as an attack. And generally we would say, well, that's just on other people to mature more and get over those emotions. But maybe there is an actual truth to that where that is sort of an affront to the fellowship of mankind. Maybe that really is a thing where I would suggest maybe we're supposed to all share in each other's gifts, that we have our talents or abilities or joys and things that we can share and give and just appreciate that from everyone, but not try to stand above or stand out and carry that aura, which is kind of a little bit oppressive to the people around. It can sort of break the harmony or the fellowship of the family unit or of the group or of the church community or of whatever. So I think it's good for people to consider that. So maybe sometimes when we define ourselves by our ego, that actually might be hurtful in some ways, either to others or ourselves. And you might feel like you're propping yourself up, which is good for you. But in reality, maybe you're distancing yourself emotionally from everyone else. And now you feel that separation or you feel that loneliness. So I think people should consider that. Um, and yeah, that's what I wanted to throw out. I just wanted to get into some unique ideas on it and people can, you know, jump off from there.
Wonderful. I appreciate that, Brian. I know as coaches, when we start working with someone and they have, maybe a self-identity or limiting belief, I'm like this because I'm just like my old man. Or, I was raised in a way, or I attended a school where, and then you have these labels that have determined who you are, but maybe never fully examined if that's true about you. And so exploring, as the first step in know thyself, maybe what you think you know isn't the whole story, or maybe it has changed over time. I can hear my mother's voice in my head saying, it must be nice to be 13 and know everything. When we're young, we think we have it figured out. I've snapped the last puzzle piece in. I've got the whole picture. I know how the world works. I understand it all. So I think we're tempted sometimes to feel like we already have solved the mysteries. And life usually serves up lessons that might invite another review of that. Maybe we haven't solved all the mysteries, but you know, if you decide I don't want to be late all the time, or you decide I want more friendship in my life, and then you look at how is it I arrived at a place where I see this lack or I have some scarcity around this thing I want, and how could I invite more of that to me? All of that self-discovery, I think, is part of know thyself. So, Dean, I'll serve it up to you. And I bet you have some thoughts given all the things we've said. So, what are your
Well,
thoughts?
well, let's see. Let me make sure my microphone is right.
It
Yeah,
is.
okay, great.
Sounds good. Yeah.
Um, I think to talk about this, I need to talk about my understanding of kind of, at least in our culture, people's default psychological position,
Mhm,
okay,
mhm,
which is something close to being asleep.
mhm,
That we and I don't know how universal this is because we live in a culture that encourages sleep to such a great degree. It may, in more traditional or less individualistic and tech-driven cultures, it may be different. I don't know. So let me just put that caveat. But for us, the default psychological position is to be asleep. And what I mean by that is to be a person whose concerns are primarily material, right? Like they're fundamentally worried about the thing that's in front of them. Uh, and and so material and immediate, and they are fundamentally emotionally reactive, right? So they're very concerned about whether they're going to get this work done today. Okay. Because, and if they don't, they're going to react to that by being worried, being upset, or their coworker says something to them they don't like, immediate emotional reaction. And this is kind of where most people live. And I think if you just survey our political landscape, you'll see that, right? So, an example of that is a kind of complete investment of the self in a political position and living all day, every day in emotional reaction to what you saw online that somebody from the other side said. So we sort of almost like a an undifferentiation, a complete enmeshment of the self in kind of whatever's immediate experience and in these sort of cultural constructs and narratives that provide for most people the only context for which to even interpret who they are, right? I'm a Republican, I'm a Democrat, I'm this, I'm whatever. Um, and that what, and so that when you then live in a culture on top of all that, that provides you with ceaseless 24/7 distraction from yourself, you essentially get people who are asleep in that sort of basic stage and whose chances of waking up are even slimmer because they live in a culture that wants them asleep.
To discourage wakefulness.
Right, right. And so I think, people, if they want to live a more differentiated, individual, aware, probably fulfilled life, they have to go through some kind of awakening process. And the way that, and that, that can get initiated in a million ways. Okay. Um, but ultimately, I think it is a process of coming to be aware of parts of yourself that you were previously unaware of making what was unconscious conscious, and continuing to do that. And ultimately, the way you do that is simply by asking yourself question after question after question. So, and this is the kind of thing people are unaware of, unconscious about. We hear the word triggers a lot, but most people, if they're even aware of that, they stop at the first level. So this is the kind of thing that happens to a lot of people that I think they're unconscious of. Let's say they're in Michael's, the craft store, right? And for whatever reason, they walk down the fake flower aisle. And in the fake flower aisle, they see a bunch of fake sunflowers. Okay. And so their mood shifts and they become more unhappy. Now, most people might not even really be aware that their shift in mood is related to having encountered the fake sunflowers. But people are sensitive and that really happens. And so the next step for the person who's waking up is to say, well, why? And then remember, oh, I remember that my babysitter when I was 9 or 10 used to have a bunch of fake sunflowers in her house, and she was so mean. And I've never forgotten the day she said X to me. And now that I think about it, I can kind of see how I believed her when I was 9 and how I kind of have functioned as if what she said was true, right? And so that's another step. So now we can we have a deeper understanding of how our inner world is affected by these memories we're unconscious of, experiences we haven't processed, beliefs we've formed and pushed down, desires we might want that have not been fulfilled because we haven't acknowledged them, all of that stuff. So, like Brian was saying, there's almost like an infinite amount of area in the self to explore to become aware of those things. And unless a person's willing to know himself, he just gets stuck at the level of emotional reactivity because now you went to Michael's and now you're mad about something. You can't say what, but you take it out on your kids, right? And also, we also live in a culture where there are quite a few voices that discourage that kind of thing, who say, what do you mean? It happened, you're 39. This happened when you're 9. It happened 30 years ago. Why can't you just get over it? Why don't you just leave it? You're making too big a deal out of it. Toughen up. We hear that kind of thing a lot. But this is not the kind of thing you can toughen up against, right? What it would mean to actually be tough and to have resilience is to face all that stuff. And I think that is so the process is about asking yourself questions. And I think for most people, certainly at the beginning of that process, they need help. It may not come naturally to everyone. They need a structure, like you said, journaling. But this is often a lot of what I do in my coaching practice is I sort of serve as the question machine for a lot of, I say, well, it's very interesting. A client sometimes will tell me a long story and they won't realize that they're telling me this story from within a particular frame, right? The particular frame about my mother-in-law is a horrible person and she comes to my house every day and she controls everything and she's mean to me and she's mean to the kids and I don't know what to do about it. Well, so I will say, I'll ask the obvious question that seems clear to me, which is, why does she come to your house every day? Right. And suddenly now we've opened up area for exploration about, the client's level of power, responsibility, what that, what. So I'm just giving an example, I guess, of how people tell stories
Mhm.
within a frame often of disempowerment because they have not explored
Yes.
that part of themselves where their power resides. So, and so they often need some kind of guide to initiate that process. And that's why I wrote this little journal called Know Thyself, a 90 session guided journal for
And the
exactly
link
that
will
reason.
be in the description. We invite you to explore
And I
it.
just prepared it as a tool.
Mhm.
Um, 90 sessions. It's mostly blank, but comes with a question and
Mhm.
on every session to kind of guide people thinking about their past, assessing the current situation for themselves, and planning a future at a level that is at least somewhat higher than that immediate asleep, getting triggered, emotionally reactive first level that people tend to default to.
Mhm. I really appreciate that. In our modern culture, as you commented, there's not an obvious reward for getting to know yourself better. It's hard to see the upside potentially. Now, people that are therapists or in coaches or spiritual counselors, they see the life improvement that's so dramatic when people begin this process. But if you're kind of in that bottom rung of Maslow's hierarchy and you're just getting to work and you're getting food on the table and you go to bed and get up and do it again, and the upside is football on Sundays or the poker game or the fact that you get to coach your kid's soccer team or there's these moments of good and drudgery and hassle, the rest. It's hard to see the upside of not just coming home and getting the dopamine hits on your phone and just getting through the day and then getting through the next day and not thinking, well, if I would just set some time aside to know myself, I know for sure I'd be happier, life would be better. So, Brian and Dean, maybe you can speak to what is the upside of getting to know yourself?
Well,
Okay,
I will
well,
say
yeah.
one. Okay.
Oh, no, go ahead. Go ahead,
Go
Dean.
ahead,
Jump
Brian.
in.
Go
Jump
ahead,
in.
Dean.
Well, I was going to say something about that I've neglected to say. That really the question is about satisfaction and about power.
Mhm.
I think that there are people, in fact, many people in the world who kind of do live at a low level of awareness
Mhm.
and are perfectly satisfied.
They're happy.
And I say more power to you,
Mhm.
right? Like, you your basic needs are met. You got kids, you love your kids, you do your life and everything is awesome and that's fine, right? And for those people, if they have really achieved um a life that's satisfying to them and meets their needs, then I, I think I explained those people by saying that somehow in their life experience, they were taught or raised in an environment, an emotional environment probably, that left them kind of highly aligned with naturally. So um, they had parents who were able to create in them really secure attachment, for example. So they're able to simply just go out into the world and reproduce these conditions that they found satisfying as a child that they can now pass on to their own children, and that's great. And so maybe they don't need to do the deep levels of self-exploration. But that's also the case, not the case for many, many people.
Mhm.
And so I think the first upside is that it lowers your pain,
Mhm.
right? And you begin to it's an the point of knowing yourself is to engage in an act of restoration. You're trying to restore
Yeah, yeah,
what was damaged, what was broken, whatever.
yes.
And and as you do that, then that allows you to have places and ways of connecting to other people in um in ways and in patterns that are much healthier and better. So your own inner pain can be reduced,
Mhm.
and the pain you experience in relationships can be reduced,
Mhm.
and you simply can become more productive because you are learning to by learning who you are, you learn what kind of life aligns with what the reality inside you is. And
Mhm.
so then like I said, you begin to have the power to reproduce that life outwardly so that your life is aligned inwardly with how you're living outwardly. So you're not that guy who wakes up in the morning and dreads going to his job,
Right,
who's obviously unaligned from that.
right.
So I'd say that's a big upside.
Thank you so much. Noticing the broken places, noticing the areas that need some restoration is always an exciting place for a coach to be. I imagine a therapist too, because we've identified the area of work. Wow. I mean, the first thing is, did you notice that's broken? Oh, did you know it could be repaired? Hey, want to get about repairing it? Your life would be different. There'd be some upside if we addressed the way your mother-in-law speaks to you in your house. You could say, that's not permitted anymore. You'll speak to me respectfully, or there's the door. So, wait, I can do that? In fact, you can. But talking it through creates new opportunities and options to, as you say, restore something that might be out of alignment. Brian, I know you've experienced so much upside as you've explored yourself and philosophy and spirituality. Do you want to share what that has done for you? What's the upside you see?
Well, I think my journey might be a little bit different. For me, I mean, I have to do it. Like there isn't, there's no, there's no other option. I have to do it. Like, I mean, I live for it. Like I said, I can't even think about not doing it. So,
Mhm.
that's my internal experience of it. And also, like, I don't think this is correct. I don't think I'm right in thinking this way, but I've experienced a lot of boredom of the world and sort of boredom of things that people are doing, and it just didn't captivate me. So I had to search, mental things, spiritual things, which is really my main interest in life. And I'm getting more spiritual over time.
Mhm.
It used to be more mental. Um, but yeah, I mean, I have to do it. I know there's no other life for me. um, but yeah, speaking more to like, this topic, one thing that I think you could say, which is pretty interesting, is on some level, I think there's like an inverse relationship between how much knowledge you think you have of the world and how much you can know yourself. And this actually kind of speaks to what I was just saying. Um, so what I mean is, if you believe you know like everything about how the world is, how people are, how different types of groups of people are, how different, jobs are, how different activities that you can participate in are, if you think you know all that, that will actually block you from being able to go and experience those things in a much more open, deeper way, where a lot more qualities of yourself would be revealed to you. So it's like if you can stay open minded to experiencing new things. When you go experience that new thing, you'll see new sides of yourself. You'll get new experiences out of it. You'll learn a lot of new things out of it.
Mhm.
So there's like an inverse relation. Whereas if you think you already know exactly what that is, exactly what that's all about, you probably won't even do it. Or if you go do it, you'll have a limited experience. So it won't add to knowledge of yourself. You won't open up new possibilities of
Mhm.
how you can participate in that, experience that, how you can like what you can learn from that and develop new skills and qualities from that, you know? So I think that's something, um, yeah, to be aware of. And as far as like benefits, I mean, it's it's tough because I sort of understand the state of being where people are content, like you were mentioning, Dean, just with, you know, average Joe, average Jane lives, regular lives.
Mhm.
And I agree with you.
Mhm.
If you are loving life, if you are satisfied, if that feels good to you, go ahead and do that. You know,
Mhm.
um, it's unnatural to reach for something that you don't even want.
Mhm.
There has to be some kind of wanting, some kind of feeling like I need to go there for it to be, you know, natural for someone to do that. But I mean, the benefits, yeah, of doing, you know,
Mhm.
philosophy or learning more about your society or learning more about whatever it is, academic fields, science, psychology, politics, economics, whatever you're exploring, spirituality, religion. I mean, you can just deepen yourself in endless different ways. I mean, people spend their whole lives doing this, they never get to the end of it. So it really is an endless, I think it's a beautiful, amazing thing. And for me personally, I have too much interest in it to stop. There isn't any way I could stop doing it. So
Can't
yeah,
stop, won't stop, can't stop, won't stop.
yeah, yeah.
I have a last thought, and then you could share with us how to get a hold of you. Dean, I'll also list your course that's online to do journal writing and begin to understand yourself. The last thought I have is sometimes there's a kind of blindness that we don't know we have. So
Mhm.
Plato talks about the cave allegory where you're seeing these shadows, you think that's the world, but the world is actually outside in the cave in the sunlight. You don't even know it's out there. I was raised as a firstborn, and as many firstborns, they're sort of a mini parent. You know, look after the kids because I'm going to run to the store for milk. Or you have this semi-adult role while you're still a child, and you can carry that into adulthood. And I was corrected when I was 30 by someone who said, you know, your siblings are not your children. They're your parents' children. You don't have to finish raising them. That's not actually your job. And I'm like, my first question was, can I be a good person and not like manage some responsibility for my siblings? And they're like, it's not your responsibility. They're actually adults. It's their own responsibility. You're disabling them by stepping in. They have to step into their own adulthood. It's not helpful. And if there was a parent that needed to step in, they have two parents that can do that. It's not you. And it was so confounding. I didn't even know. I was so blind that I was operating in that way. So when that blindness for something you're doing is corrected and you have a broader vision, all these possibilities open up for you. So part of the cure of knowing thyself is a cure for areas of blindness you don't even know you have because you're blind to them. So if you have some self-esteem challenges, you're going to turn over the rock and be afraid what you're going to find under it. You'll find new vision, new hope, new opportunities, new options, probably more happiness and peace of mind. That's what you find when you look. So Dean, any final thoughts and how do we get a hold of you?
Well, I'll say something about being scared of what you might find,
Yes.
right? And sure, people will find in themselves all sorts of selfishness, all sorts of darkness. Also, particularly, I think one thing that motivates a lot of people that they're unconscious of is the desire for revenge,
Yes.
right?
The petty
And
human nature things.
right. And I think the way to respond to that is to say, Well, that's not necessarily a forever state,
Mhm.
right? These are things that accompany a low awareness position. All right. And that by facing them and knowing them, you transcend them. And that as you move upward, you see that you have other options for how to respond to, say, whatever it is that sparked in you a desire for revenge. So here you have only one option, that is to want revenge. Here you have many more options for how to think about that incident and how to respond to it. And so that's to say, for people who are afraid of doing work that involves self-exploration because they might find something they don't like, well, I would say that's probably true, but you will also find a path out of that thing that you
Yes.
don't know. You can find me at alifedesign.org, at deanabbott.com, and on Twitter at Dean Abbott.
Great. We're going to include a link to your new men's coaching programs too, if people have an interest in those and want
Sure.
some
Thank you.
FaceTime with you. So, Brian, do you have any final thoughts about, but what happens if we look and we don't like what we find?
Yeah, for that, I mean, then you got to change that, one way or another.
And you can change it
Um,
when you see it.
but I definitely don't think people should have fear of looking under all the rocks. You know what I mean? I think you got to turn over every rock. And yeah, I don't believe in living in fear that way. I do understand people can have that, but I agree that it's good to like Dean was saying, it's good to look under, the hood of yourself and see what's in there. And if you find something you don't like, then change it. I mean, that's the only way it's going to change, right?
Mhm.
So it's definitely the way forward.
Mhm.
And honestly, you become a better man, woman in the process. I mean, that's just a great thing to do.
Mhm.
Everyone has flaws, so there's really nothing to be ashamed of. And I think it's natural to want to be better in life, improve yourself,
Mhm.
as you go. That's a great thing to do. So yeah, I would just say that. And there's many different processes you can use to try to, get past a certain quality or tendency you have that you don't like.
Mhm.
You can hire one of us and we can help you with that. And yeah, you can find me at alifedesign.org or my Instagram is called Special K Coaching.
Wonderful. Well, so okay, step one, we put down our phones. Step two, we pick up our journals. And we know that whatever we find there will probably create more options and solutions for ourselves. And the upside might be more peace of mind, more happiness, more agency in our lives. So it was so good to talk this ancient Greek topic with you, even if we may never visit the Oracle of Delphi. It was nice to have this conversation. Okay. Thanks for visiting us. Share, like, subscribe, and we'll see you in the next one.